Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague. Introduction. You may recall that on Wednesday, 29 November 2023, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Bola Tinubu, GCFR, lay before the joint sitting of the National Assembly the 2024 Appropriation Bill named the Budget of Renewed Hope. In his speech, the President enjoined the members of the National Assembly to scrutinize the details of the 2024 budget estimate and present to ensure due diligence and value for money. The bill containing the estimate of revenue and expenditure of the Federation from 2024 fiscal year in the aggregate sum of 27,503,404,073 naira 861. 1,861 naira only for the year ending 31st December 2024. 2. Legislative action. The Senate debated the general principle of the bill on the Thursday, 30th November and Friday, 1st December 2023, respectively. The bill was read for the second time on Friday, the 1st December 2023, and consequently referred to the Committee on Appropriation for further legislative action. On Saturday, 2nd December 2023, the committee met with the chairman of the subcommittee on the approval guidelines provided for the processes of the bill, and they are all urged to adhere to it. And also, in addition, in pursuant to Order 92.4 of the Senate Standing Rules, detailed schedule of the bill were referred to all subcommittee on scrutiny. Mr. President, my colleague, I wish to state here that the submission and defense of the budget report by subcommittee before the Appropriation Committee was scheduled for 5 days, Wednesday 13 to Sunday 17 December 2023. However, this was later extended to another 4 days between Monday 18 to Thursday 21st of December due to delay experienced by some subcommittee to meet the MDAs and harmonize their report with their House of Representatives counterpart. Still on page 3, in the same vein, the subcommittee on conclusion of the harmonized report with the House of Representatives counterpart submitted and defended the 2024 report before the Committee on Appropriation. Revenue assumption for 2024 Appropriation Bill. In preparing the details of 2024 Appropriation Bill, the committee adopted the medium-term expenditure framework strategy paper approved by the National Assembly as shown below, but later updated to the one submitted by the executive. And the assumption as stated below. Highlight of the 2024 Appropriation Bill. After due consideration of the submission by subcommittee and interaction with relevant stakeholders, the highlight of the bill as recommended by the committee are as follows. Aggregate expenditure, 28 trillion, 777 billion, 404 million, 73,861 naira. Statutory transfer, 1 trillion, 742 billion, 788 million, 786 million, 788,150. Recurrent expenditure, 8 trillion, 768 billion, 513 million, 380,852. Capital expenditure, 9 trillion, 995 billion, 143 million, 298 naira 28. The GDP stood at 3.88%. Mr. President, my dear colleague, it is important to state that at this point, Committee on Appropriation worked closely and harmoniously with the executive arm of government in processing the bill. Through the closely and harmonious appropriation process, the executive forwarded requests for additional funding and some item of expenditure to the committee, which were not included in the bill as submitted by the executive, in order to accommodate the request and the following adjustments have been made on the bill. 1. The foreign exchange differentials. 2. The GOE revenue increase. 3. The GOE personnel reduction. 4. Service-wide vote weight adjustment. And 5. Reduction from service-wide. Observation. The committee observed as follows. 1. 2024 Appropriation Bill was presented to the National Assembly late, and this is against the Fiscal Responsibility Act that requires the bill to be presented for not less than 3 months before the next financial year, which puts intense pressure on processing of the bill. 2. The provision of multilateral and bilateral loan funded projects in the sum of 1,051,914,486,314. 3. Inconsistency in the revenue of the government-owned enterprise. 4. Removal of some agencies' personnel costs from the FGM payroll. 5. Inadequate funding and shortfall in some MDA's budgetary allocation. 6. Provision of capital component is higher than compared with the previous budget presented to the National Assembly. 7. Request for additional funding on item of expenditure not originally contained in the bill. Recommendation. Arising from the above observation, the committee recommends thus: 1. To ensure thorough scrutiny of the budget proposal, the executive should henceforth comply with the provision of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. 2. Executive should ensure compliance with the provision of relevant and extant law as it concerns the GOEs. 3. Agencies removed from the FGM budget should step up their revenue generation, fund itself, and remit more to the CRF. 4. Provision of additional funds to some MDAs not appropriately funded. 5. Executive branch is encouraged to sustain the increase on capital component over the recurrent to ensure developmental programs across the country. And 6. Additional funding were made available for some MDAs. Consequently, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, given that due consideration has been followed in processing the 2024 Appropriation Bill, the committee further recommends that the Senate should consider and approve the bill for an act to authorize the issuance from the Consolidated Revenue Fund account the total sum of 28,774,404,73,861 naira, only of which 1,742,786,788,150 naira only is for statutory transfers, while 8,290,960,606,831 only is for debt service. Also, 8,768,513,380,852 only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 9,995,143,298,028 naira only is for contribution to the development fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on 31st day of December 2024. Conclusion. On behalf of the committee, we wish to thank the President of the Senate and the entire Senate leadership and our dear colleague for the support given to the committee in processing this bill. We also appreciate the Appropriation Subcommittee for their cooperation and understanding of the circumstances of processing this bill. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Total deduction as recommended. Schedule Part C, Federal Shares of Federation Revenues as recommended. Schedule D, Independent Revenues as recommended. Schedule E, Other Dividends as recommended. Schedule F, Aids and Grants as recommended. Schedule G, Special Levies Accounts Transfer to CRF and CDF. special levies accounts as recommended.
Thank you. Even if we finish, we still have 3 more items. Government-owned enterprises, Part H. GOE's revenue net of operating surplus as recommended. Schedules. The total schedules as recommended. Part J, statutory transfers. Statutory transfers in total as recommended. Part K, debt service. Total debt service as recommended. The schedule. Part 1, recurrent non-debt expenditure. Total recurrent non-debt expenditure as recommended. Schedule Part M, capital expenditure. Total capital expenditure as recommended. Aggregate expenditure as recommended. Clauses 1 to 13 as recommended. Short title, Clause 13 as recommended. Long title as recommended. Schedule 1 as recommended. Explanatory memorandum as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of Supply? Yes. As recommended, be read for the 3rd time. Those who are in support of this motion say aye. Aye. And those against say nay. The ayes have it. They are not here. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation a total sum of 28,747,404,073,861 naira only, of which 1,742,786,788,150 naira only is for statutory transfers. 8,270,960,606,831 naira only is for debt service. 8,768,513,380,852 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 9,995,143,298,008 naira only is for contribution to the development funds for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2024. Third reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to authorize the issue from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation, the total sum of 28,704,073,861 naira only, of which 1,788,150 naira only is for statutory transfers. 8,270,960,606,831 naira only is for debt service. 8,768,380,852 naira only is for recurrent non-debt expenditure, while the sum of 9,995,143,298,028 naira only is for contribution to the Development Fund for capital expenditure for the year ending on the 31st day of December 2024. This bill is now read for the third time and passed.